Hello everybody, welcome to Educational Snacking with Shilpa Joshi. This is the Independence Week and our good health actually offers us independence from many metabolic diseases. So let's celebrate this Independence Week by inviting individuals who impact our health. So this week I have invited Dr. Shashank Shah. Dr. Shashank Shah is one of the most renowned bariatric surgeons in this country. He practices in Mumbai. He also practices in Pune, and in Mumbai he is at Hinduja Hospital and at Lilavati Hospital, Khar Hinduja Hospital and Lilavati Hospital. In Pune he has his own center which is called LOC, which does not stand for line of control, but probably it is also line of control of. It's called the Lapro Obesogenic Center. So with this, I have already invited Dr. Shashank Shah here. He'll connect with us within a minute or so. So guys, keep your pens and papers. I'm sorry, you don't need a pen and paper. Note down your questions and keep it ready. Ask sir as many questions as you want on bariatric surgery, on obesity, everything. He is the one stop to ask all the questions regarding metabolic surgery. So welcome sir. Can you see me? Dr. Shah, can you see me? Can you see me? Can you hear me? So this is Dr. Shashank Shah. Welcome to this program. This program is called Educational Snacking. Dietitians talk a lot about snacking, and snacking should be such that it is low in calories, right? And it offers something which is more than food. So this is what our snacking program offers, is food for brain, and therefore food for thought. And hence, it is our privilege to welcome you. So should we begin? Do you want to say something before we begin? I think his connection is...
I must say, yes, connection is slight a problem, but still I can hear you. So I said this food for brain is required during this COVID period because work is not there. So this food probably would make everyone more satiated.
Correct.
Very interesting topic and very good initiative. I must congratulate you that you are giving food to everyone at home and low calorie and highly dense in knowledge and awareness. Very good initiative.
Thank you. So, sir, let's begin. Sir has always also been the past president of ARROW. ARROW stands for All India Association for Advancing Research in Obesity. When he was the president, I was the treasurer of that association, and we have worked very closely. So, sir, first question to you is, and we will take questions which are coming from audience as well, but my first question to you is, sorry, at what point do patients actually come for weight loss surgery? Do they actually come only by looking at their weight on the scale, or they come looking at their metabolic issues? So say very badly controlled sugar or sleep apnea, which may not be at morbid obesity levels. So what is your experience with it?
So the experience is varied. So I must tell you, most of the patients who come have had multiple attempts for earlier 8, 10, 15 years. Many times they were successful, but they could not maintain the weight loss. There is weight regain, and they still have some hope, and some come with some positive hope that I have lost many times, so I'll lose again. Some feel frustrated that no, I was never successful. But one of the main driving factors for patients to come is some kind of pain or some surgery. So some come with severe joint pain, reduced mobility. Some come with easy breathlessness.
I think his connection is... We'll wait for his...
They are not comfortable with their partner because their sexual libido is probably affected, or personal relationship gets affected. Some feel that the craving has drastically increased. So it could be psychological problems, social problems, personal problems, pain, and at the same time, diseases like diabetes, hypertension, and very high blood pressure. Someone is admitted with accelerated hypertension because of severe sleep apnea. People have extremely disturbed sleep patterns, so they never feel that they are fresh, and n number of problems. But very few of them really directly correlated with obesity till they go to a serious grade. So many people don't even think that if they snore, it's a disease and it is related to obesity. Or maybe many women who have stress incontinence do not
Yes.
realize that it is because of obesity. But if there is joint replacement needed and an orthopedic surgeon says, unless you lose weight, you will not be undergoing surgery, then they understand. And unfortunately, sometimes patients come at a very advanced stage, BMI above 50, weight more than 150, 200, 300 at any age, and it is very surprising. But a wide variety of presentations, and it is really learning for us from everyone's experiences. Everyone's experience is definitely entirely different from other, but the end suffering is really similar. And here I must tell everyone that what I feel that obesity is definitely a disease, a multifactorial disease, and it has to be treated like any other disease.
Yes. Yes, it shouldn't be looked at as a cosmetic
No.
problem, rather than it should be looked as a health problem. And I think that is something which everybody should understand. Of course, individuals who are fit look better, but individuals are obese. It is not about pointing to the way they look, but rather pointing out to their health. And therefore, that discrimination should not, because we always say body shaming is a bad thing. You should never speak about anybody's weight or comment on it, because body shaming psychologically disturbs a person. But at the same time, one has to understand that it has huge amount of metabolic repercussions, and probably that is a nature's way of telling you that things are actually going out of control. Sir, while saying that, how many of the patients that actually come to you have had multiple attempts, who actually seriously went on diet programs or seriously exercised, or because see, we all, there are so many dietitians who have joined, there are so many doctors who have joined this program, and there are a lot of patients who have joined the program. Now, we know we see different kinds of people. We see certain kinds of patients or individuals who go from one diet to another, but not sticking on to something. But we also see other kind of individuals who actually stick on, who actually follow and still do not lose weight, or do not lose as much as recommended to elevate themselves of, say, sleep apnea, or get their sugars back in control. What is the percentage of such people that you see who get just exhausted and tired and say, I am done with everything and now I'm ready for surgery? What is the percentage of people, and do you have those experiences?
Yes, this is an interesting fact. So I must tell you that majority of the patient, almost 99% of the patients have had some attempts, and they have had multiple failures, multiple successes, but eventually the weight slowly keeps on growing. It is very unfortunate truth. But at the same time, I must tell you that if you want to shortlist some who have consistently followed for 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years, the number would fall, because the sustenance is hardly up to 2, 3 months, a few weeks, and not beyond that. Partly hormones are responsible, partly body's metabolism is responsible, and partly I think present life's challenges, being busy with work, schedule, academics, that also plays a role. Altogether, unfortunately, many patients are unable to sustain the same lifestyle, and as we see that eating, partying, enjoying is a part of fun and enjoyment which everyone wants as much as possible. And going on a lifestyle program probably will, they feel that it will take them away, even though it doesn't necessarily take them away. But if you really ask me, those who have maintained this commitment for a long period, I find only handful of experiences, and for most of them it was probably a professional requirement with which the fear of that losing a professional career or whatever could make them maintain, but all others probably would fall prey for the hormonal changes, the hunger hormone, other compensated metabolism. At the same time, even though I see many people who have had similar sustained attempts, unfortunately the results are very different in those, and the habit is to compare. Someone lost 7 kgs, I lost 2 kgs in 1 month, 2 weeks, whatever. And this difference also disappoints some people, but it is a must for everyone to understand that losing is important and maintaining is important. You may not count a number. Any loss is eventually going to be beneficial for health, and it should encourage everyone. So I feel that lifestyle change, diet, exercise definitely has a role in spite of whichever therapy you choose, pharmacotherapy, surgery, bariatric surgery, balloon or anything. That should be a change which should be sustained. But unfortunately, many patients realize it at a very late stage in life,
Yes.
and then those are the ones who come with 200 kg, 150 kg, or those who already have diabetes, they are insulin dependent, and they have some complications of diabetes. For them, then there is no point in waiting, because weight loss may not induce all other hormonal and metabolic change. but
Okay.
but you can name the modality, and probably many patients have tried it, whether it is advertisement, online, scientific, unscientific. Patients try to explore all shortcuts, and
Yes.
unfortunately this is not a shortcut. This
There
has
is no
to be
shortcut.
sustained over long term.
Yeah, this is a lot of hard work. This is a lot of commitment. It is like, you're absolutely wedding yourself to that program. And one more thing which has always intrigued me, you have done so many surgeries of patients who are really grossly overweight. Like you rightly said, weight of 200 kgs or, even more. Do you see a genetic pattern in them? I'm not talking about classical genetic obesity like Prader-Willi or anything. I'm just saying that do you really see that children, younger children or younger adults who are grossly overweight, say 150, 200, 250 kgs, they have sort of parents who are highly overweight, or do you see that link, or it is always one off?
And we definitely see that link. We see in that link in almost 70% of the patients. But in 30% of the patients, we see that parents are obese. One of the sons is obese, but the other son and the daughter, in spite of being in the same environment, same lifestyle, is not obese. This does teach us that probably some genetics, some mutations, certain genes, it's like we know about MC4R gene, they are chromosome 15. So there are certain chromosomes, certain genetic changes, certain mutations which may also be responsible for this. However, if there is obesity in the genes, diabetes in the genes, the predisposition for the siblings or any close relatives will definitely be higher. And it is not only related to lifestyle. Even if one of them is staying in India and someone in abroad, the genetic predisposition remains same. There is one interesting experiment which I must tell you, that it was done that bariatric surgery was done on pairs, twins,
Huh?
identical twins. Then there were husband, wife, close friends, those in the same school or college, living in the same hostel as room partners, and results were
Huh?
compared. It was found that the twins were not in the same environment. They were far away from each other, entirely different lifestyle. Whereas husband, wife, and room partners were having food from the same mess, same cook, everything.
Correct.
But surprisingly, the results of the same surgery in a matched pair twins was almost exactly identical, in spite of being in different environments. And husband, wife, friends who were genetically different, but in the same environment, same lifestyle, they'll eat at the same time, they'll party together, but results
Hmm.
were not similar. So genetics definitely plays a role in predisposition, in results, in response, and even in outcomes of ailment.
Lovely insight, sir. Now, one more question that I want to ask. There are many procedures, and there are patients also who have joined us. There are a lot of dietitians who have joined us. Which are the procedures that are offered? And just tell us a little bit in short so that, after that we can discuss the nutritional nuances with each procedure. Before that, we need to understand what procedure itself is.
Perfect, perfect. So all these procedures are basically based on stomach and or intestines and different parts of intestines. Even though it is that the metabolic centers exist in stomach, intestine, pancreas, liver, brain, what could be easily treated surgically is stomach and intestine because those surgeries are being performed over centuries and we know more about it and they are least harmful and can be easily performed. Now, just to give you a summary, stomach secretes a hormone called ghrelin, which is also known as hunger hormone, but it can have impact on obesity, diabetes, pancreatic function, conversion of food into fat, or maybe loss of fat after reduction in ghrelin. Similarly, different parts of intestine secrete different hormones, like the duodenum will have cholecystokinin, maybe some anti-incretin factor. The last part of intestine secretes GLP-1 and PYY, which are known as incretins. That means they stimulate pancreas, they suppress appetite, and they work against obesity and diabetes. So if any time food reaches last part of intestine, these anti-obesity, anti-diabetic hormones are secreted. And anytime food reaches the curvature of the stomach, the hunger hormone levels come down. Then also there is something in the speed with which food moves from stomach to the intestine. If the speed of food
Sorry.
transit from stomach to intestine is very slow, then the absorption is higher and stimulation of those hormones is very late, that person will keep on feeling hungry very frequently, more than others, and his metabolism will be of weight gain. So speed of transit. So based on these gross principles, these surgeries are designed. The simplest and the least one is called vertical gastrectomy or a sleeve gastrectomy. It is very different from standard gastrectomy. Stomach removal or gastrectomy for any other reason is always horizontal because we don't want those patients to lose weight. Only when it is intended to be metabolic and bariatric surgery, the division is vertical. And that is why the curvature of the stomach is removed and the intention is that the hunger hormone levels will come down. It doesn't mean that the person doesn't feel hungry. Person can feel normal hunger. Excessive cravings are gone, but the hormonal actions on the metabolism become favorable for further weight loss and maintenance. Similarly, there are procedures which are called bypass procedure. That means there is a shortcut created from stomach to the last part of intestine. Then in that also in bypass, there is a Roux-en-Y bypass or a one anastomosis bypass. It is based on the size of the stomach pouch. Size of the stomach pouch can be very small or a long vertical tube, and then the intestine is connected to that stomach tube or pouch. What happens is food comes into the stomach, and instead of going into the remnant stomach or the duodenum, it directly enters the small intestine. So the total length of intestine available for fat absorption is much less. And the proteins and other minerals could be absorbed, but there is fat malabsorption. At the same time, because food reaches the last part of intestine fast, as I said earlier, the last part of intestine would secrete certain hormones which will speed up your basal metabolic rate, which will suppress your appetite or excess craving. And because these hormonal actions are long term and sustained, these effects can be there for many years. Now there are some more procedures in which side of the intestine is connected to the side of the stomach so that food can travel through the normal passage, food can travel through the shortcut. So part of the food which creates shortcut can create these hormonal stimuli, and the food which passes through the normal intestinal tract will give the necessary nutrients. There is more research being done. But I hope that there will be procedures then which can offer minimum nutritional effects, even though they are never zero. So in short, stomach procedures, they are called restrictive. That means this volume of the stomach is less. Malabsorptive is where the fat is getting malabsorbed, and the metabolic because their actions are on metabolism. So these are all different types of metabolic procedures. There are still more, some endoscopic balloons, but they are still not included in the category of bariatric surgery because they are still temporary and short-lived.
Okay, very interesting. So, sir, tell me one thing. Is there a preparation required? Suppose there is a patient who comes to you for any kind of procedure, say gastric bypass or vertical sleeve gastrectomy, whichever surgery they decide. There are two kinds of things which I have observed. There is one which is a nutritional preparation, and there is another which is psychological preparation. I think psychological preparation is very important because sometimes we see even if the patient wants a suture done, if they are more comfortable if they have seen the OT before. Otherwise, taking them to a casualty and giving them a suture, the thought only gives them, the blood pressure rises or they collapse or something like that. So, what are the first thing we are going to discuss about psychological? The reason being, it's the least discussed. See, people talk about the medical aspect, nutritional aspect, but very few actually talk about psychological preparation and what is it that you talk to patients so that they, because all their life hence on, they have to eat little food. Where world will be eating a full pizza, they can't even finish half a slice. I think that is very, very restrictive even in their conscience or in their mind. Forget the intestine and the stomach. It's very restrictive here that I
The mind.
can't eat it.
Is the
So
mind.
how do you prepare them? Yeah, that is my question. How do you prepare them?
Very, very important question and most important aspect. So I must congratulate you for this question. Because all dietitians, patients, everyone must know about it. And we definitely believe that psychological preparation is probably the most important preparation. And it's not the psychological preparation only of the patient. It is of the family. It is of the friends, colleagues, because everyone has to understand one of the most important part of psychological preparation which we believe is not making the patient feel guilty or preparing the family members to understand that it's a disease like any other disease and your relative has been unfortunate, so you cannot blame that person that you did not follow, you did this, even though there are things which could be wrong, but not everyone who has those impaired lifestyles or disordered lifestyle would be that morbidly obese. So that is one part which we explain. Then the second thing is, as we are certified Center of Excellence by the American Society, we follow those norms. So there is a lecture, Life After Surgery. It's a presentation for 3 hours. So we take them through various phases. First 2 weeks, second 2 weeks, first 3 months. Just like in a conference we teach to a dietitian, there is a session conducted through with the patient and the family so that everyone is aware that these are his expectations, this is how he should follow. At the same time, it is mandatory for them to attend one group meeting of patients, those who have had this operation. There could be a different tip from any new patient, there could be some challenge, there could be some new habit. So they learn more from other patients. At the same time, we have to teach them to eat slowly, chew properly, because in normal life you can easily gulp without chewing and stomach can do that job of churning. But after surgery, their eating has to be slow. Then we prepare dishes, bowls, spoons of smaller size. Even though the patient is huge, sometimes they feel scared that if I eat so little, will I feel weak? So they have to be ensured that their fat bank is going to be opened and lot of money in the form of energy will be converted. So there will be never a positive of energy. So they in fact become more energetic. At the same time, we need to counsel spouse, friends. Friends will tend to take them for party. Maybe family will prepare a party. So we try and suggest that till his first 2 months are over, try and not party in front of that person, or try and eat, even though their hormonal change is so strong, they don't feel like eating. But why challenge their hedonic center to make them feel that they should eat? Apart from this, when they are in the first 2 weeks of liquid phase, they always feel like chewing something. Biting and chewing gives different satisfaction. So we have designed some things for them. So they can chew, they can bite, still their stomach will not have the particles. So these are absorbable, easily dissolvable things which can they chew. And then from there to their new lifestyle change. So a person wants to eat chicken, he will say, "Can I eat chicken, doctor?" I said, "Yes, you can eat chicken. But if you want to eat butter chicken, we would just remove the word butter and request you to prepare something different." And these are preparations which makes the patient feel that he is going to able to enjoy eating, and that is most important. He is going to lose weight, he is going to feel more energetic, he is going to feel younger. We also want to make a provision for shopping, because they lose their weight and their clothes size changes very rapidly. So right from that, the psychological preparation has to be done very positively. At the same time, even though they eat less, their satiety of eating is probably more than what they were eating, much more. And this is another part which needs to be explained. That earlier a person eats 4 rotis and still doesn't feel full, but he's scared, so he stops. And after surgery, he eats three-fourths of a roti, but he has satisfaction of eating 5 rotis. So this new satisfaction also has to be communicated. And once they are well prepared, then this nutritional preparation becomes a cakewalk. They are very positive. They are ready to follow anything you say.
Now, because there are so many patients here, I want you to, it has to come from you. The point of surgery is people say अभी हमने पैसा खर्चा किया, ऑपरेशन कराया, अभी क्यों डाइट फॉलो करने का, अभी तो मजा करने का इसके बाद. So I want you to emphasize two things. I want you to talk about role of nutrition pre and post surgery, especially proteins and micronutrients, because this is something we hear from all surgeons all the time, that give protein, give micronutrients. They are very, very important, and that is never enough. I want you to please emphasize these two, and then we'll start taking questions as they come in.
Yes. So I must tell you that surgery is probably just a tool to initiate weight loss, make hormonal changes. What would impact most in the form of results is appropriate nutritional care, psychological care in the post-operative period. And to solve this problem, what I have done is I have one psychologist who is doing PhD in bariatric and one nutritionist who is doing PhD in bariatric nutrition. So we have full-time researchers who are studying and trying to teach patients, but everyone has to think of this as their PhD. Every patient is a PhD participant and they have to follow. Nutrition is extremely important. Proteins are important for body's remodeling, skin's remodeling, skin contracture, healing. For everything, for immunity, proteins are important. Because the stomach pouch is smaller, the amount of protein consumed may not be as high as we can expect from our regular food. So maybe concentrated protein supplements. We have to adopt to some supplements and combination of protein dense food which is easily bioavailable. So dietitian has to be smart enough to choose the food options where the bioavailability is very good, the protein content is very high. We try and prefer higher protein content and not things which have protein and fat together. Too much of protein and fat can probably take them away. Micronutrients are extremely important. Again, the pouch size is small, or the word bypass is used because food does not come in direct contact with some part of intestine. So mainly upper intestine. So many of the micronutrients are not absorbed. So even though you focus on diet, they may not be fully absorbed. So micronutrient supplementation in the form of supplement is required. There are standardized supplements available. Fortunately, the first bariatric surgery was performed way back in 1955, and there are standardized supplements for bariatric patients. But it is extremely difficult to design a diet where they would get adequate amount of protein, some high amount of fiber, micronutrients, macronutrients, and some carbohydrates in one meal. So it could be one meal, or it could be different single dish meals, and then you divide everything together. And so it is probably the smartest and the most difficult job for a dietitian or a nutritionist to satisfy a bariatric patient after surgery in enjoying his meals, at the same time supplementing proteins and micronutrients through diets as well as through supplements.
Okay. Now, because there are so many dietitians who have logged on, I want you to discuss two very important things which we as dietitians see in patients post bariatric surgery. One is dumping syndrome, and second is hypoglycemia, because blood sugars just come rushing down. We do not even have a time to take the second breath, and the patient is already in hypoglycemia. I want you to discuss these 2 points in details: dumping syndrome and hypoglycemia.
Okay. So the dumping syndrome is two types. One is called early dumping and other is called late dumping. Early dumping is because food directly enters from stomach to the intestine, and there could be vasodilatation and a phenomena where the patient feels I have palpitation, something is happening to me, and generally happens because of concentrated sugars or concentrated carbohydrates and sugars together, or fat and sugar together, and in large
Hmm.
amounts and eating very rapidly. So again,
Hmm.
the role of a nutritionist to treat dumping syndrome is modified diet, convert it to high
Hmm.
protein, high fiber, and then minimal amount of this to enjoy. Late dumping is something which is important. What happens is when they consume high calorie food, the sugar gets absorbed very rapidly and the pancreas is stimulated because of that higher sugar, and all the hormones secreted through these procedures which stimulate pancreas further. So there is a surge of insulin in the body, and this surge of insulin can sustain for a time, during which blood sugar can transiently come down. There is absolutely nothing to worry, no one faints, nothing happens. It's only a feeling. And we call that this feeling is a blessing because it prevents patient from eating those types of food very regularly. And so dumping is probably an intended effect. At the same time, too much of dumping, diarrhea would definitely need treatment. So one has to ensure that patient doesn't get pain or diarrhea at the same time. Sometimes some other complications like internal hernia, biliary colic, or some other intestinal presentation can mimic this. Now here for dumping syndrome, for all the nutritionists, I would like to give you one simple example. The probably bariatric surgery I'm doing for last 16, 17 years, but the nutritional science is written hundreds of years ago. And what was used in writing them was partial gastrectomies. Billroth 1, Billroth 2, and various types of gastrojejunostomies for various tumors, for various cancer. Stomach was removed and intestine was connected. They were earlier known as post-gastrectomy syndromes. So if you just forget about bariatrics and think of those patients as patients after any gastrectomy, gastrojejunostomy, or stomach to intestinal anastomosis, study those nutritional requirements and therapies, they are exactly same as bariatric surgery because except for the pouch and arrangement, the hormonal action, the mechanical action, the action of dumping, they are exactly the same. So it is very fortunate that bariatric surgery made us refocus on that part of literature which existed for over 200 years. And we refer back to all post-gastrectomy syndromes and we start understanding. So now we have become more aggressive in treating patients of other intestinal surgeries, resection anastomosis, esophagectomies, gastrectomies as aggressively in nutritional care as we are with bariatric surgery. So every nutritionist has to remember that this nutritional care is not for bariatric surgery only. Bariatric surgery is to make us aware that nutritional care is required after any illness, any surgical intervention, and it should be as aggressive as a patient of bariatric surgery.
Thank you. Thank you for emphasizing the role of nutrition. Now, sir, one very important question. I think this is something which must be asked to you all the time. Just imagine there is a young girl, about 24, 25 years of age, who is grossly obese, because of which she has PCOS. And now her parents put her through a bariatric procedure because she is not able to lose weight or whatever it is. Now, the first question I'm sure that the mother of that girl is going to ask you is, can she have a baby? If you're going to do all this later on, if she marries, can she have a baby? Because in pregnancy, you are expected to eat a little more, maybe 300 calories more. Is her stomach ever going to fit that 300 calories more? So, what do you first advise surgery for a girl as young as 24, 25? Because we also know that lower body weight is very important for fertility. As weight increases, fertility drops down. So therefore, both these, it's like a two sides of coin. You want the weight for the fertility, and once you have the fertility, will the weight come in the way of getting pregnant? So that is something I want you to discuss.
Very interesting dilemma. Actually, I'm giving true experience. We must have operated on over 1,000 unmarried girls, on boys, and almost 700 of them have conceived normally. Now, here the interesting part is the world is moving towards insulin resistance, polycystic ovarian disease, and infertility, and we see that extremely common. And every month there is a new IVF center, infertility center open.
Yes, agree.
And one of the major reasons is obesity. So if we treat this obesity at an early age, in the ovarian function improves, quality of ovum improves, PCOD resolves, insulin resistance goes down, their acanthosis, black discoloration on the neck, moles, grow increases, it improves drastically, they become fairer because there is even facial acanthosis and they start becoming looking darker. Their overall confidence goes. What is most important, which I have heard from many girls, is they get a best or a better partner, which is their dream of their life. And the basis of happiness is definitely your partner, because next 40, 50, 60 years are with that partner. And initially, having a partner of choice or of dream is of utmost importance. At the same time, even it is known that in women, the fat converts female hormones into male hormones and their environment becomes more androgenic. Now, removing it from being androgenic will treat their excess hair growth, hirsutism, at the same time improves and keeps their sexual libido for a longer period of years. And all this at the same time, one very interesting thought which you had, which I studied in a metabolic research, it is extremely surprising that in spite of eating less, those ladies gain weight only during pregnancy, and babies also get enough nutrition, they become healthy. And this is really a mystery, and this is the mystery of hormones. I have hardly seen any patient who remained cachexic or the baby remained underweight. In fact, we had to counsel them that you have undergone bariatric surgery. So the requirement, let it be more or less in the line of bariatric surgery plus requirement of pregnancy. Probably the stomach does dilate or hormones regenerate during pregnancy and then resolve after pregnancy. What is most interesting is certain published reports do suggest that pregnancy after bariatric surgery is safer than pregnancy in the obese, because invariably there is cesarean section, and a lady with obesity undergoes cesarean section, 60% of them develop hernias because of traction on the abdominal wall. If the lady remains obese, probably there is a chance of pregnancy induced hypertension or type 2 diabetes, which becomes a challenge. There is hydramnios, macrocephalus, and all those. So it's not only maternal health, but the newer research suggests that even the health of a child, like how we have heard in Mahabharata, Arjun, whatever heard. Similarly, babies can read mother's genes. And if the mother has undergone bariatric surgery, some of the transmitted genetic illnesses can be minimized. And this is one reason which I have found and I believe, and that is why I recommend this. I'll, in brief, give an example of a young girl who had come to me whose parents were doctors. 5 years extensively she was trying to come from 95 below. Many times she touched 85, went back to 95, and at the end of 5 years she came, got surgery done. She came down to 60 kg. She was happy, she got a handsome husband, she got married, she yet to conceive. She asked her parents, when I came to you 5 years back and you suggested something, did you really imagine that in 5 years I will be 60 kg and I would maintain? You love me, you always care for me, did you? The parents said, actually speaking, we probably did not. Then she asked, in spite of being sure as a doctor that I would not lose 40 kg and maintain for 5 years, you still suggested me to go for all other options, which in your mind indirectly you are confident would not be successful in making me lose so much. So this is the thought process which I am giving to everyone, which has to change. Childhood adolescent obesity is very rapidly increasing, and if you find any abnormalities in their hormonal milieu, in their parameters, pre-diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia, probably dyslipidemia or any of the metabolic abnormalities at such a younger age would have worse life-threatening manifestations at the end of 25 years, which is far earlier in life than otherwise we would expect.
Okay. Now, one of the final questions, I'm still waiting for audience to ask you. I think you're explaining it so well that there are really no questions coming up. But maybe there are two things which I'm worried about. What happens about if there is extreme weight loss? Say, let's presume somebody is 300 kgs and now has become 100 kgs. That skin sagging, do you actually recommend another surgery for to get that rid of that extra skin? What do you do?
Yes. So, actually speaking, the skin surgeries are required based on the age and the stage at which the patient reaches. So, if the patient comes at a very, very advanced stage, then the elasticity of the skin is lost and 100% contraction is not possible. So we fortunately offer A to Z of bariatric solution. That means skin corrections, aesthetic correction. But here once again, having adequate nutritional care, micronutrients become an important element because skin, hair, nails, everything would require protein, vitamins, minerals, macronutrients, micronutrients for their remodeling. So this is one part. Fortunately, the weight loss is much slower. So the skin gets time to contract. Even though the best outcome of the effect of skin contraction is at the end of 1.5 years. But if you treat at a younger age and between a BMI of 35 to 42, the skin contraction is excellent. Once someone goes to super obesity, super obesity, or drags morbid obesity for many years, then unfortunately that person would need another correction. But that is one of the psychological counseling and preparations, which is a part of preoperative counseling. Once the person loses weight, his diabetes gone, he is pain free, he is comfortable, smiling. Unfortunately, the society and relatives in India do not always support for aesthetic correction. And I believe having a complete procedure, weight loss, complete aesthetics is complete bariatric surgery. Just like how you correct your dental abnormalities, cataract surgery, this is just similar to that, and this is superficial, and every patient should get it and get that beautiful, acceptable look, a healthy shape, and should be happy. And that is actually part of human rights to improve the psychological status by any kind of disease. Even this is called a disease if it has effects on psychological status.
Okay, now the final question. Suppose some patient has had bariatric surgery in month of March first week this year, 2020, and immediately COVID began. And now everybody is thinking so much about nutrition in COVID that you need to eat well, you need to take your proteins, you need to do this, that. Do you think these patients post surgery, because their intake drops so drastically, are they at risk of these? Because see, even if they are coming to hospital for whatever checkups or whatever, their exposure is there. And we are now seeing people who are never exposed also getting infection. So who don't even leave their house are still getting COVID within their house. Is that risk more in these patients? And if it is more, then what should be done to prevent this, whatever, risk or, yeah.
Okay, very interesting question. Maybe fortunately or unfortunately, we operated on many patients before the 23rd. Almost 50, 60 patients underwent surgery. The only thing we told them from 23rd was to remain in isolation at least for 2 weeks. So actually the post-operative convalescence, the immunity after bariatric surgery increases, the inflammatory markers come down, but it takes a period of 4 to 6 weeks. So this period of 4 to 6 weeks is important for them to remain active, to have mobility, to hydrate themselves, to ensure adequate protein intake, maybe in the form of liquid protein supplements, to focus on regular intake of micronutrients and follow utmost hygiene. Fortunately, across India, in the Obesity Surgery Society of India, whichever procedures were done in the 3 months before lockdown started, we haven't had anyone seriously affected. Even though we had majority of the patients who were operated 2 3 years earlier. Maybe I have about 13 patients, 14 patients who had COVID, but all of them, fortunately, touch wood, recovered well. Maybe it's luck, maybe it's their immunity, maybe they lost weight, they became non-diabetic, their hypertension resolved, and they were nutritionally better because of counseling and supplements. Many times, maybe I will give you one example. One of my patients, without names, who underwent surgery, the young boy, he had mild diabetes, hypertension, everything resolved. His 2 year younger brother, who was 125 kg, did not have any comorbidities, could not survive from COVID. And then the younger brother had a thought that maybe I underwent surgery. He was thinking of it. Probably he had taken that decision a year earlier. He would have been thinner, non diabetic, non hypertensive, and could have sustained this COVID infection. So it's either way, the fear and apprehension of COVID in the immediate post-operative period did remain, but we started operating from June regularly, June, July, and touch wood. So far, we have been lucky, but we definitely teach a very strict protocol to patient relatives, screen the family for COVID, and request them for 2 weeks of isolation, even though they are not positive. This is the care we are following. But this is
Okay.
probably not only COVID, probably world is likely to see many COVID-like illnesses. And for the first time, common man is focusing on immunity and nutrition. I believe,
Yes.
Shilpa, you have probably been the vice president, likely to be a president of a bigger organization. You and all these nutritional organizations have a very large role to offer the best nutritional service and improve overall immunity of Indians per se.
Thank you so much, sir. And now we are ending this program. What is your message? There are dietitians on the forum, there are doctors on the forum, and there are patients on the forum. So we want a crisp 2 minute message, sir, before we take your leave.
Definitely. So first and foremost, obesity is a disease. Number two, lifestyle change is mandatory. It can be slow, sustained, but it has to be long term. Never get disappointed if the results are suboptimal. Results are important. For those where there is no success, aggressive treatment, medications, pharmacotherapy, even surgery, if required, is a scientific option to remain healthy and lose weight over long term. But most important and above all, I must tell you, everyone should have one nutritional consultation in life to know what is healthy, what is best, what would give them maximum nutrition, and what you can get through nutrition you cannot get through anything, even supplements. And that is the best way of improving your immunity, longevity, and remaining away from many diseases.
Thank you, sir. It was such a beautiful session. We got to learn so much more. And thank you for coming here. Thank you for spending your valuable time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shilpa,
Have a
and thank
great,
you all the audience. We would wait for good feedbacks or more questions.
of course, of course. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank,
Bye.
thank you. Good night.
That was one.